Everybody, welcome to Before College TV Live. I'm Harlan Cohn, and today I'm here with Regan Kibby. Regan, how are you doing today? Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty great.
Now, where are you right now? It looks absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, I'm sitting on the back porch swing at my fiance's apartment down in North Carolina.
Fiance, I did not
Yep,
know there is a fiance.
there is a
Wow.
fiance.
When did this whole fiance thing happen?
We got engaged in October, last October, so
Okay,
it's
that
been a
makes sense.
good handful of months now. We are scheduled to get married on May 31st.
May 31st of
Yep.
2020, the year of the pandemic.
Yeah, so we had a whole wedding planned. Obviously, most of that had to get canceled.
Oh,
So we'll be doing a smaller live stream ceremony for friends and family.
so
The
you're not
important
going to let
thing
it
is that we're
stop
still
you.
getting married. No.
Yeah, that's the thing. I wonder how that works. So you had to cancel everything, and this is not why we're here. This is just one of the bonuses that you're going to get with Regan today. Regan is a senior at the U.S. Naval Academy, and I love how you put this. You grew up in rural North Carolina as a
Yeah.
queer Jewish transgender man who's dedicated to making the world a better place for those who come next. Would you say that those are your words, right?
Yeah, that's definitely my goal in life.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily have the easiest time of it growing up. So,
Well, you seem incredibly comfortable with who you are, and you seem very comfortable in your skin, and it makes me comfortable. And the reason that I wanted to have you on today is because there are so many young people who identify as one of the things that you had mentioned, whether they identify as a person in rural North Carolina. Uh, that could be wonderful. It could have its challenges, I imagine, right?
yep.
Being
Yep.
in a small town, because let's just set this up. You're from a very small town, so small, like people wouldn't even know the town, right?
Yeah, definitely a really small town next to another small town in a rural county.
Right.
Yeah.
So being in North Carolina, being in the South, and being in a rural community, then growing up, really feeling like what you see in the mirror isn't really who you are. Explain to me when this started, when you came to the realization that, something doesn't feel like
Mhm.
I think it should feel.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to explain for those who haven't experienced it because it is so like intensely personal. Um, but I can't pinpoint an exact moment because it was always there, right? It was always there growing up. I always felt a little weird. Like I remember, hung out with all the boys. They were my friends. It was cool. But then as we started getting older, kind of that distance that they created, like, oh no, like you're a girl. We can't hang out with you. We can't play with you as much. Just kind of like these weird kind of socially imposed
Right.
limitations there. I remember one big moment though was in fifth grade. You know, DARE, like the drug education
Yes.
program thing they have in school. So we did DARE, obviously in elementary school, and we had like this graduation ceremony in fifth grade. And my school in rural North Carolina school, they had a super strict dress code for that event. They said all boys have to be in like a button down shirt or a polo shirt and slacks, and all girls have to be in a skirt or a dress. And I remember talking to my teacher, and I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really know why. You just know that it feels intensely wrong
Wow.
to do
So,
that.
yeah.
And my parents were always super supportive, which is probably another reason why it was such a big confrontational moment. Because I told my parents I don't want to wear a skirt. They said, okay, you don't have to. Like they've always been really great about letting me and my sisters express ourselves however we want. But my school and my community was not like that. So that's where most of that came from.
Yeah. So
I
you're in
actually
fifth grade.
ended up skipping school.
Oh, you
Yes.
did. So you just, so
Yeah.
avoidance was the answer.
Yeah. I didn't just leave school because I
I know it
wasn't good at
wasn't you.
anything.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of how a lot of those things went. I told my mom, I was like, I can't do that. And she's like, okay, cool. Stay home.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
where are you in birth order with your siblings?
I am the middle.
So you're the middle. So you have older sisters and younger sisters.
I
Also,
have one of each, one
one of
older,
each,
one younger.
one older, one
Yeah.
younger, and you're the middle. And you were born, and one of the things is when I have these conversations, I try to
Mm.
say the right thing. I try to use the right acronyms. I
Yeah.
have so much respect for you and your journey, and for anybody who's going through a similar experience. If like I mess up along the way, let me know, because like I hate when I do that. But it's interesting because I was thinking you were born a female, or
Hmm.
but to say that, the thing is, well, like, dude, I wasn't born a female, I was born a male in a female. Like, how do I do that, and how do I present that,
Yeah.
and how does
So
somebody else?
the most kind of common terminology for that is saying assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth,
Right.
because it really is kind of that like assignation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was born, doctor said, female, it's a girl, and then all the social things that went along with it. So usually people say assigned female at birth, or AFAB, AMAB, if you want to use a
Right.
fun acronym for it. But yeah, so that's typically how people phrase that.
Right. So you were assigned female at birth, and then you grew up in a culture and society where anyone who interacted with you would assume and identify you as a female. So like when you look at pictures growing up, it's three sisters who, do. And when you look at those old pictures, are you always is there, tell me what that's like. What do you look different than them, or was there a little bit of the beginning of this process?
Yeah, so definitely like to the outside perspective growing up, they would have seen me as, oh, Reagan's the tomboy of the family, right? Because yeah, my parents were great, let us follow our interests. So I would always wear like the baggy shorts and the different shirts. And so my sister and I, we could never really share clothes or anything like that,
Yeah.
which was also good because we didn't steal each other's clothes, less arguments. But yeah, so looking back at those old pictures, it's I don't know, it's kind of hit or miss depending on the day, depending on the mood. So sometimes I'll look at those pictures and just kind of remember the good memories, family memories associated with them, and it's pretty good. But sometimes, especially if it's something where I had longer hair or was doing something a little more associated with girls, things like that. I mean, it can definitely be uncomfortable.
So explain to me, fifth grade, you had that challenge where they wanted you to wear
Mhm.
a dress. And then take me through high school, and were you able to experience a lot of the traditions and be authentic, or was that in conflict with what you were feeling?
So I'd say the first kind of I was definitely always an outlier in my community. It started with honestly like being the tomboy, right? Not really hanging out with the other girls, things like that. And then just kind of growing up that always people just started assuming that I was a lesbian, that I was gay, like all through middle school and going into high school. And I think I definitely wasn't at a place at that point in my life where I could say, like, I am trans. It's a long introspective process, takes a long time, as you obviously know, to figure out who you are and all of that. So I kind of rolled with that for a while. Everyone just assumed I was gay, went with
Was
it.
that
It was,
was that painful? Were people unkind, or was it just, that's just Reagan?
it's a rural North Carolina community. So there was definitely a good deal of unkindness. I think I don't know. I wasn't necessarily the victim of like outright bullying, things like that, which is good. It's definitely good.
Yeah.
But you still know those conversations are happening behind your back, and there were still instances, honestly, more so with the adults in the community and at my school than with like the other students.
Is there an
I
incident where you
remember
remember them talking or looking or pointing?
in eighth grade, actually, this sucked. My assistant principal at my middle school called my mom and outed me as gay to my mom. Like it was, yeah, not
How does someone
not a
do that without you outing yourself to this person, or was there a history of a conversation?
so at that point, I think it was like the beginning of eighth grade, probably, where people just started asking me like, "Are you gay? You seem like you're gay. Are you gay?" And I was like, you know what, this let me just accept some kind of label so I don't have to think about this anymore. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'm gay. So I was out at school in
Mhm.
eighth grade, and then a group of kids didn't like me. Went and told the principal there was a rumor that they saw me kissing another girl none of it ever happened, like completely fabricated. But of course, someone in that group was the principal's daughter.
Okay.
So believed her wholeheartedly, called me into her office. Like I was such a little rule abider when I was young. Was terrified of getting in trouble. Had never been in the principal's office before. Had no idea what was going on.
Right.
Uh, and yeah, I just had to sit there as she told me all these things the kids were saying. Didn't listen to anything I said that it wasn't true. Called my mom and told her that I was in trouble for kissing another female student. Is how she put it.
Really? And if somebody
Yeah,
was kissing
yeah.
someone of the other gender,
Mhm.
would that have been something that caused such a gigantic response?
Doubtfully.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, they would have said, "Hey, don't do that. If I catch you again, something's gonna happen." But
Right.
again, what really hurt the most was that, like, she didn't listen to a single thing I had to say because the incident that she was talking about never happened
Right.
in the first place. It was just these kids who didn't like that I was different. So,
Right. And you have parents who, when they hear that, listen.
mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so my mom wasn't happy with the school, definitely went all mama bear on that.
Yeah.
Told him like, "Hey, that wasn't cool what you were doing." But also, I don't know. I didn't want it to become some huge thing because that just drew more attention to me and everything. So
Right.
I just kind of told her like, "Thank you for being protective, but like, let's just let this one go."
Right. So
That's
when you
where
get
I was at that point in my life.
so then you get to high school, how large was your high school?
Not huge, probably between 8 and 900 students.
Okay. So you had a couple hundred people in your grade,
Mhm.
perhaps. Did you have friends? Did you find your people and places in high school? Was that an easy experience for you, or was it again challenging?
I think it was a little easier than middle school, but there were still definite challenges there. But I think my two biggest niches that I found in high school was I was on the soccer team. So the soccer team, we all grew pretty close, and it was a good group to be a part of, especially during season. And
Right.
then I was in JROTC too.
Okay. And for
Uh,
those who don't know, JROTC, Junior,
is Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps.
right,
Very long acronym, as most things in the military are.
right,
But it's yeah. So JROTC, it's a class and usually has some extracurricular teams and things associated with it in high school. It is kind of framed in the military setting, right? So we were Army JROTC. So once a week we wore a uniform and we had to learn how to march and do things like that. But really, it's about kind of basic citizenship, basic skills.
right.
It was a
So,
really good group to be a part of.
you found some comfort in being an athlete, being on the soccer team, and then also being part of junior ROTC. But it sounds like the things that you like junior ROTC is probably, are there a lot of females in JROTC?
Mm, probably less than males, but
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a huge drastic difference, but it was definitely a more, I would say, like masculine activity.
Right. So there's always been that pull. So then you're in high school, and explain to me how you decided to pursue, a life in the military, or putting yourself, it sounds, in this situation, it sounds like you do not shy away from challenges.
I've never made a habit of that. No.
Right. You almost seek those challenges. So
Mhm.
at this time you are in high school. You are you even familiar with the term transgender? Are you interested in identifying yourself? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So thinking back on that time period, like middle school and high school for this, I don't remember one moment like learning what trans was. But I do remember a couple pieces, here and there of maybe seeing a. I remember I watched a video about Jazz Jennings, her, right? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But honestly, I just wasn't. I don't think I was ready to have those tough conversations with myself at that point,
Yeah.
right? To really, because I mean, I was already different enough living in a community that was not accepting of even those differences. Um, so I don't know. I think definitely more of a subconscious than a conscious level. But I was just like, I I can't be this different living in
Right.
this place.
So if you identify as gay, was that something that you continue to identify as, and were comfortable with people just, if they need to assume and categorize, you
Mhm.
were okay with that? Is that
I mean, it stopped a lot of questions.
okay? So you did that. And
Yeah.
then when it came to going to school functions, homecoming or prom, or those things that are like
Mhm.
date events, how did you handle those?
I didn't go to them.
Okay.
Yeah. So the only thing that I guess, similar event would be we had a military ball with all the JROTC schools in the county, which was kind of like a prom type event, but it was a little more formal. We had a formal dinner, and then there was a dance after. So like I wore a tux and went with friends usually
Right.
to that. But
So that was the only time. So a lot of it was not participating. Did you have
yeah,
any close friends that you can really talk to outside of your family about what you were feeling and going through?
not so much in high school. No, I've always been
Not
close to
one.
my sister.
Right.
No, like I said, I had my friends were mostly either JROTC or soccer people, and we would hang out outside of school and outside of those events sometimes, but not like
Right.
I didn't have a best friend or anything like that in
Right.
high
So,
school.
because I was just thinking, I mean, it's hard enough to be a teenager and to have to deal with another layer of confusion and questions, and to have
Mhm.
no one who you can confide in. I would imagine that would be very lonely and extremely painful.
Yeah, yeah, wasn't always a good time. Like I said I wasn't close with my sister, so that helped, and
Yeah.
she's always been accepting, as have my parents. But the parent to kid relationship is different than sibling to sibling.
Yeah, and that loneliness, that feeling of being alone, and I just want to unpack that a little bit, because for somebody who is in high school or is in middle school and doesn't
Mhm,
have that close confidant, or even doesn't have the sibling, and they feel so alone,
mhm.
how can they work through these feelings and find connection and not have to do it all by themselves?
Yeah. I mean, definitely, not gonna lie and say it's an easy process. Nothing about growing up how I did, where I did was an easy process. I think, I mean, I read a lot. I
Who
read a
and what
lot.
did you read?
Oh, let's see. Some of my favorite childhood book series. So I was really into the Hardy Boys. I read most of those. Aragon, Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, uh, Twilight. Even I read that series a couple times.
Right.
I read basically anything and everything I could get my hands on, mostly fantasy, because there is something about escaping into a fantasy world
Yeah.
and picturing yourself in a different environment where you could be anything and have the potential for that. So I
Yeah.
read a lot. I read a
It
lot
sounds like
growing
it.
up.
And then
Um,
when it came to the imagination, when it came to being a junior and senior and imagining what you were going to do next,
mhm.
how did the U.S. Military Academy, Naval Academy, how did that become something that you set your sights on?
So that was actually, I do remember where this one started. So I was talking to one of my JROTC instructors because I've always been good at school and most
Mm.
school related academic endeavors. Um, like I'm not good at everything, but school and I have always gotten along. And so I did really well in JROTC and in all my classes. And one of my instructors said, "Hey, like you're pretty smart, you're pretty good at things. You should look into the service academies." And at that point, it was freshman or sophomore year of high school. It's probably sophomore year of high school. I had never even heard of them before. Like I had never heard of West Point, Naval Academy, Air Force, Coast Guard, any of those.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, cool. So I looked them up, uh, fell in love with what I was seeing because it was
Yeah.
like you were saying, it was challenging, it was good, it would set me up for later in life, all of these good reasons for it. And I had been interested in the military for a while.
Right.
Um, yeah, I lived in San Diego for actually birth through fourth grade. I
Okay.
lived in San Diego. It wasn't a military reason, like we weren't a military family. We just happened to move from San Diego to North Carolina, which are two pretty big military spots.
Yeah.
Um, so some of my earliest memories are of the ships and the sailors and all of the Fleet Week and everything going on in San Diego. So I'd always had that kind of percolating in the back
Right.
of my mind. And then this conversation with my JROTC instructor and just doing more military related things in JROTC, I thought, okay, this is something I'm interested in, something I can do. So I researched a lot. The academies and most schools have pretty big online presences now.
Yeah.
So I researched a lot. I applied for their summer camps to try to get out to the actual campuses and see what it was about.
Right.
And the summer before my senior year of high school, so right after my junior year, I did the summer camps at Navy, West Point, and Air Force,
Oh,
like
you did
back to
all of
back
those.
weeks. Yeah, back
Wow.
to back weeks. I went to all of the camps, and that was, I mean, like after those, I was set. Like I am going to one of these places. This is awesome.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
amazing that you would even take the initiative. Was that a hard thing to do to get into those camps? And did you have to pay for it, or do they give you money, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's like the beginning part of the application. So first, applying to a service academy, any of them, there are five, is a much longer process than applying to a normal college or university.
Okay.
So you usually start it during your junior year. So the first part of the application is you can roll it also into being part of the application for the summer camp.
Okay.
So it's kind of the initial groundwork there.
That's great
So
to
I
know.
applied. Yeah, so I had opened the applications for Navy, West Point, and Air Force at the same time as applying for their summer camps for rising high school seniors. Uh, and then, yeah, going to the camps. Well, we have to get accepted to it. I'm not sure what the acceptance rate for the summer camps is. I mean, it's pretty low for all the academies overall. For
Right.
the summer camps, definitely more people can get into those. Um, and then each was I don't remember the exact amount of money, but each was a couple $100 to
Okay.
go to. And I kind of crowdsourced with some family members and to kind of get those covered.
So the money, right? Because I know a lot of times money's a big issue when it comes to students even thinking about doing that. And being a junior, it's great to know. So if someone's a freshman or a sophomore, really thinking about how to get involved with those camps, and that's great. The application continues and carries over. So you were sold, and when you were filling this out, when you're going through the application and you have to check the
Mhm.
box, uh, was that something, when did it start to feel like, you know what? I wish there was another box.
Yeah, I didn't really contemplate my gender much more, probably until like I got to the academy. Because like I said, it's a long application process. It's
Yeah.
senior year. I'm applying to those schools and a lot of other schools. It's
Yeah.
just crazy. A lot of things are happening. Acceptance letters rolling in, getting excited. How am I going to pay for this? Like all of these normal
Right.
questions that you have during that really busy period of your life. So I didn't think too much about it, honestly, until I got to the academy. And so we call freshman year plebe year at the
Plebe
Naval
year.
Academy.
Okay.
Plebe year, yeah. From I think it's Latin word plebeian,
Okay.
basically like servant or slave.
Fair enough. Okay. Right.
Yeah. So it's very traditional. So plebe year starts off with an event called plebe summer, which is
Okay.
basically the boot camp before you start at the academy.
Okay.
And West Point they also have plebes, but they had something called Beast Summer. Air Force Academy, they call their plebes dualies, but they have a dually summer. Like all of these have this kind of
Yeah.
summer at the beginning. And over plebe summer, one of the interesting things they have us do is read the newspaper. We have to have conversational knowledge on three news articles every day. And we get 5 minutes after we get back from PTing in the morning to read this. So it's crazy. It's always hectic. But I remember over plebe summer is when the military announced that they were no longer going to be kicking out transgender service members simply for being trans.
Uh,
And I remember I saw that over plebe summer. And again, plebe summer is a crazy time. You're up super early, go to bed late at night, like day is packed with activity. You're getting screamed at all the time, lots of push-ups, very, boot camp. But I remember seeing that, and sorry, there's some sirens in the
that's
background.
okay. It's good for like the boot camp getting yelled at. It goes along with the plebe summer.
It
Sirens,
does.
chaos. Right.
Yeah, plebe summer is a 7-week chaotic experience. But I do remember that the military announced that there was an article about it in the newspaper that was delivered to us. And I just kind of thought when I saw that, like, wait a minute, huh? Maybe that is kind of what I've been feeling. And
Right.
honestly, on some level, I think getting that information right when I started the military, because there's I think that subconscious thing of knowing I can't be trans and be in the military. Right. There were
Right.
these two big parts of my identity. I'd always
Right.
really wanted to serve and do those things. So maybe that in some way was also me suppressing this other side of myself because I knew they couldn't coincide.
Yeah.
Again, that's just psychological speculation there. But when I realized that like those two things could coincide, I started thinking about it a lot more. And when Plebe Summer ended, I joined. We have kind of a GSA style club at the academy called Spectrum.
So GSA
So,
style, what does that GSA stand for?
uh, so GSA traditionally is Gay Straight Alliance.
Okay.
I know some people now are calling it a Gender Sexuality Alliance, which I actually like a lot better. I think that's cooler
Yeah.
because it also ties in genders and sexualities, kind of the whole community. But so we had an LGBTQ and ally group at the academy called Spectrum, and I went to those meetings. We met once a week,
So when you
and
go to
that
the
was
meeting for the first time, when you walk in that door, is that an easy
yeah.
meeting to go to?
No, I think it was a little better because I knew someone in my company that was also going, so we kind of like we went to into the meeting and showed me where everything was, which is good having someone company. I mean, so the academy is split into 30 different companies,
Hmm.
just like groups of 160-ish students in each company, and that's where we live in our dorms is with our company.
Gotcha.
So someone in my company, someone I lived with in the dorm, was going, and I went with her. So that was a little easier already knowing someone in the room. But
Yeah.
it was still kind of a daunting thing. I'm walking into this room with all these people I don't know. I'm not exactly sure exactly who I am yet. All these things are kind of happening right now for the first time. So yeah, I mean, it was not an easy thing to start, but it was definitely worth it because that was a really good community that I found.
Yeah. I would imagine that that first step of exposing yourself to being in that situation and letting people know, I mean, they don't know who you are or why you're there, but the assumption would be that there's a part of you that connects to this other piece where people have strong feelings. I think
Yeah.
that's a really hard thing to do. I think it's fascinating. I just want to like be really clear that you're such a dynamic person, and there are so many parts to who you are, and your love for the military and interest and passion for what you do is so interesting. And
Mhm.
I find I could talk to you just about that. But then there's that other piece of, and this is where I was introduced to you, and why I wanted to learn more, is the piece of being a trans uh, college student who's in the military academy, and the your gender identity is
Mhm.
one part of you, but it's not all of you. You
Yeah.
know, and I think that that's something, just for this conversation, I just want to make it so clear that I recognize it's just a part of you. And it's just, some days it's a bigger part, I would imagine, if we're having this conversation. But other days, how big of a part is it of you?
I mean, your gender is very integral to who you are, and especially being trans, it puts you I, more conscious of your gender would be a good way because most people don't think about it, right? Like,
No,
oh yeah, you were assigned male at birth, you're a man, cool, go on with your day, don't have to think about it.
right,
Um, but on a typical day to day, like at school, doing everything I do, I mean, it doesn't come up. It's a non-issue. I'm a student. I'm a midshipman. I go to classes. I do my military duties. I call my fiance at night, and we FaceTime for a while. Like it's on a typical day to day, it's not an issue in my
right,
life.
right. And it's not, but I would imagine prior to going through, yeah, crazy, there's a lot going on there. All right. Everyone's okay. But prior to
Yeah.
going through the transition, I would imagine it's probably a bigger part of your life. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, probably should have specified that of where I'm at right now. The fact that I can just go through my day and not think about it is definitely a privileged position that I wasn't always in, and that a lot of trans people, especially younger trans people, aren't in. So before, like during the whole, so let's take it back to that plebe summer, right,
yes.
where they said they can't kick us out simply for being trans.
Yes.
So that was over the summer, and then at the end of that semester, so you know, July to December. By the end of that semester, having been in that community with Navy Spectrum and talking to those people and doing a lot of introspection, I was finally able to say, I am trans, right? So I came out to myself, some friends at school. I came out to my sister, parents a little while later, because it's just, it's a little scarier.
Right. So when you come out to yourself, do you actually look in the mirror and say it? Do you journal it? What do you do?
I think it wasn't a nice movie shot, right, where I stand up in front of the mirror and say, I am transgender. Uh, emotionally, it probably felt like that. I think it was a mental recognition before anything else.
Yeah.
I think what really solidified it was probably like the first few friends that I told at the academy.
And how did that go down? Who did you tell?
It went So I told the friend and company that had brought me to the Spectrum meeting
Okay.
that first week.
That's what
She
shit.
was the first one that I had that conversation with, and she was great, really accepting. Then I came out to my roommates, like a little confusion, kind of what does that mean, whatever. But they were still pretty good, right?
And you had female identifying roommates.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. That semester I lived in a four-person room,
So when
so it
you
was
tell
me and
them,
three other people.
right, how do you, what do you say to them? Like, what does that look like?
Uh, I don't remember exactly what the conversation was, but I think so. There were three of them. I talked to two of them that were in the room. Obviously, heart pounding, super nervous. I was just like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I've been going through this whole process of self-discovery, and I am trans. Like, I'm not going to treat you differently in the room. I don't want it to be anything weird. But I just thought you should know, and I would appreciate if you try to call me she less and things like that, right?" So I didn't want to, because again, like I had to live with them for a while,
Right.
and I knew that that is, especially I mean, coming out as gay in a room is like people are still going to have some weird feelings about that, but coming out as trans, I think, sets you even further apart
Yeah. So I
than a
think,
sexuality difference. Yeah.
and what do you expect? So for somebody who decides to share this information, whether they're gay or
Mhm.
trans or something that would would impact the other person in that room, what is it that you
Mhm.
are looking for, and why are you sharing it?
I
Like,
think,
what reaction are you hoping to get?
I mean, basically, I was hoping for anything that was not negative.
Yeah.
Obviously, like positive would be the best. Total acceptance, like of course I will refer to you as he, or with whatever desired pronouns you have. All of those things would be like the goal, the best case scenario. But when I came out to them, I was just hoping for anything that wasn't like, that's weird, I don't support it, I don't want to room with you anymore, I'm going to go
Yeah.
talk to our superiors and try to get in a different
Right. 'Cause
room.
you have to be scared of the rejection.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's, I mean, when you share any fundamental aspect of yourself like that, it's always going to be
Right.
a scary situation. Even in instances where you think it's going to be positive, it's still
Yeah.
a little scary because the what if is looming over you.
Yeah, and if they had a negative reaction, it sounds like because you already had that ally from Spectrum, if your
Mhm.
roommates responded in a way that you didn't want them to respond, you were okay, like you were prepared, it sounded like.
Yeah, so the rooming situation at the academy is a little different. So first, you live with your company, but you also have to live in a room with your class. Right. So when I showed up, I was a member of the class of 2019, and then there were 40. plebes. So there were 40 members of the class of 19 in my company.
Mhm.
And each company has obviously all four classes in it. So of those 40 people, 10 were females, right? Were women at the academy. So I only had a choice of 9 other roommates. Well, I say choice. Plebe year, you don't get to pick who you
Right.
room with. They assign it. So I was assigned a room with these other people. So if it didn't work out with them, I only really had a limited number of other roommates that I could live
Right. This could have
with.
been a disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really scary thing, but you felt like you had to share this. You didn't want to wait till the end of the year.
Yeah. And a big part of that is like I had finally reached this point where I was completely honest and open with myself, right? After a lifetime of wondering and questioning and feeling uncomfortable and all of these things, that when I finally got to that point, I was just like, you know what? I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to keep doing this. Like, I'm done with it. I'm going to be myself and tell people who I am.
Yeah.
And that was a really big formative moment for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was like, you know what? Even if it turns out poorly, like I am done not being me.
Yeah. You figured out who you were, and did you like yourself at this point? Did you love yourself? Were you still unsure of how you felt about you?
I would say pretty unsure of how I felt about me still. I definitely felt better. Like being honest with yourself about anything is a good starting block.
Right.
Um, but it's a weird time. All I knew was that I couldn't be kicked out. Right? They hadn't actually announced a plan for how they were going to allow service members to transition and continue to serve and serve
Right.
openly. So it was that whole year, the entirety of plebe year. All I knew was that I couldn't be kicked out, and that a plan was forthcoming. Right. So it was still kind of a weird limbo situation. It wasn't until the next summer that they actually put out a policy for how they would allow people to transition.
Okay.
So yeah, so I kind of right after the semester change during plebe year. So at the beginning of second semester, I came out as trans to my chain of command,
Okay.
uh, which is there's a long chain of command. I spoke to my company officer, the person in charge of the company, not a midshipman, an actual Marine or Navy officer who's in charge of each company,
What was
and
that person's response?
he had a pretty good response. He said, "Okay, like I'm going to be honest, I don't know about most of this, but I will make sure you're treated with dignity and respect, and carry
Great.
on as normal. And I'll let you know when we do know anything else."
Right.
So it was, I mean, I think honestly, as good of a response as I could have hoped for at that
Right.
time.
Right.
He couldn't do anything because there was no policy to actually allow transitions. But he was like, okay, let me know if you have a problem with anyone. Like, we'll try to truck on as good as we can right now until we get more word.
So I can understand, and for someone who isn't as familiar with the trans journey, and is trans
Mhm.
journey the way to say it, transgender journey, what's the best? Does it matter?
That works. A journey. It is. I mean, it's a journey of self discovery, of transitioning, of
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. So to go through that, you come to the realization that, that you are transgender. Then you come to the realization of you want to now be referred to as the gender that you were born and identify with. So then it's the process of letting people know so that
Yeah.
they can refer to you in a different in the way that you want to be referred to. And then
Yeah.
also then there's the physical transformation, which
Hmm.
and there's a wonderful article, I think it's from the Washington Post, that shares a lot of the realization and journey. Uh, but now, did you want to fully transition? What was the next phase of this, and how did that work? How did you work through that?
Yeah. So you kind of touched on it without necessarily naming it directly. Like with any kind of transition, there are the two aspects to it. There's physical and social. Right? Social is social, your social relationships, your interactions with the people around you. So that was me coming out to some friends, my roommates, my chain of command, trying to ask people to use male pronouns, things like that. So that's very much the social side. And that can extend also to what you wear, how you present yourself. Those are all very social indicators. And then the physical side is different. Well, the social side is also different for everyone. But the physical side, most people have this idea of a transition being, oh, you had the surgery, right? And I always hate that, right? Like it's no, it's not just one surgery. Um, People want different things. Some people want to do hormone therapy, some don't. Some want top surgery, bottom surgery, any variation of that. Like there's no one correct way to transition.
Mhm.
Um, so everyone's journey is different, and you're not any less valid if you decide to only do, 3 out of 4 options or whatever it is, right? You really like that's another process of introspection. It's a lot of thinking and about how you want to see yourself and what body you're going to be comfortable with. So for me, that whole process involved a lot of doctor's appointments because I had to go through the military side of it. And the way that the military policy was set up was you had to create like a transition plan and then get that plan approved by your chain of command again. So, like a medical transition plan is what it meant. So I had to go through like jump through all the military hoops, which was annoying because it took a long time. But
Right.
also, I think it was pretty beneficial. Like I had to talk to a psychiatrist for a couple sessions, get their recommendation for me to go forth with any steps I wanted to do, which I think it's requiring that is kind of questionable. But like the fact that I did that, I think was actually beneficial.
Had
It's
you
all, it's
had
all
Yeah, had you talked to a
sorry.
therapist or a psychiatrist in the past and had someone to bounce these feelings off of?
No. Yeah, so it was totally new, like, I had never done the counseling therapy thing before,
Yeah,
um, and it was I mean, it was a really beneficial process. I definitely recommend it to, like, literally anyone struggling with anything or
yeah,
not even struggling, right? It's just very good to have those people and those points of view to bounce those off of and just kind of get a different perspective on your own brain. Because as the one inhabiting it, you can't always get that objective point of view.
yeah. Were your parents encouraging of you transitioning?
Yeah, yeah, so I came out to my parents probably similar thing around the time I came out to my chain of command, all that kind of stuff. And they were, I mean, it's weird, right? It's always like they had a daughter their whole lives, and now all of a sudden they had a son, right? So it
Right,
definitely took a little period of adjustment for them, but in the whole process, they were really supportive. They were really good. They slipped up a couple times, right, calling me by the wrong pronoun or whatever it is, but I would just correct them. They apologize, move on, and it
right,
didn't take that long before they were on board, calling me the correct things and everything. So it was a growing process for the whole family.
right. Whereas, was your name and I don't know if your name was always Reagan, was it a different name before?
No, so I lucked out. Yeah,
Right.
I was born Reagan. My parents named me
Oh, that's
Reagan,
so
which
easy.
is funny. It's nice. It's definitely nice to have a neutral name because it's funny
That's
because neither of my sisters do. So it just kind of lucked out that I
right.
was the
That's
one
a
to
nice thing to
do
do,
it.
to give, like, your kid a gender neutral name just because, like, you never know,
Yeah, yeah,
until they know. So that's really you're very lucky that your parents have been on board and your siblings are on board, and it
yeah.
sounds like given all of the things that could have gone wrong, they went pretty right for you. Would you say that? Or are we missing a big chunk of when, life was so horribly difficult and, you bottomed out? Is there a bottom out?
Not no, not in
No?
that kind of way. I think the most difficult time came from like external forces because the military trans policy had changed. I was allowed to transition and serve. It was awesome. But one thing that I wasn't expecting that was kind of weird was that I had to leave the academy for a year. So it was there was this clause in the way the military trans policy was written that you had to be stable in your gender for 18 months before you were able to assess So either enlist in the military or commission as an officer. Um,
Okay.
and that's when you graduate the academy, you receive your commission. So any ban on any certain group joining the military is essentially the same thing as banning someone from graduating from the service academy because you
Right.
commission and assess into the military, into the officer corps. Uh, so there was this policy that had 18 months, and the only way that 18-month thing would be met is if I left for a year. So I
Right.
had to go back home to North Carolina. And that was unexpected and weird, right? Like I knew myself, I was finally being able to physically and socially transition in the way I wanted to. And then all of a sudden I was back in rural North Carolina
Yeah.
in that place that I just escaped a couple years ago.
Right.
Uh, yeah, so it was weird.
And you were
It
back
was
as
yeah,
a male.
yeah,
So reintroducing yourself to this rural community as Reagan, who is now uh, a man.
yeah. It was weird. I think a lot of it though, kind of my tactic was not to go to those places, right? I didn't visit my high school. I didn't hang out around town where I knew people were going to be. I had a job. I interned at a law office in the next town over. Still a pretty small town, but
Yeah.
better. It was a really good office. I liked the people. I worked out, so like I would just kind of have a triangle that I went every day between work,
Right.
gym, home.
Right. So that's a huge
And
transition to be thrown. I mean, to be thrown back into your hometown and not be able to go back in 18 months. That's a long time. Was the expectation that you would go back? Do you think they expected you to go back, or do you think there was a hope or a thought, or what was the agenda there?
yeah, I mean, my expectation was always to return, right? Like I didn't go through all that work getting into the academy, which is its own whole process
Yeah.
of those first 2 years at the academy, which were pretty rough, like me figuring a lot of things out and trying to do all of that. Like, no, I didn't. I didn't go through all of that for me to give up on my dream of serving now.
Right.
So I was home for a year, tried to keep myself as busy as possible. But the other weird thing during that year was that they announced that they were going to change the trans policy and institute a ban on trans service members. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
all of that, if that
Yes.
happened.
Yes. There's a new
So
administration, and there was new policy that was issued.
yeah, so that was kind of a big shock. Wasn't expecting that. No one had been expecting that. Um, so kind of dealing with that suddenly completely thrown into limbo, right? Like everything about my future was now much less certain than it had been just 2 months ago.
Right.
So that made the year a lot tougher than I had thought it was going to be going into it. And it was already tough, right? Like going back home, totally unexpected change of
Right.
plans, having to join a different class, like remember the class of 20 now. But that made it tough. Yeah.
Yeah, you are remarkable, and that question of, you know, did you cry? Did you bottom out? Did it get hard? What was the toughest place? I mean, have you had those feelings? Do you allow yourself to feel that? Because you've been on this. This is a really remarkable journey.
Yeah. I would say I never had the big, you know, bottoming out, didn't think it was gonna work out, giving up moment, but I definitely had a lot of doubts and a lot of questions, a lot of emotions. Like when they first announced the ban and everything was going to change, I was definitely emotional, cried a couple times. It was weird, right? Because everything I had worked so hard for
Yeah.
such a long time, just the practical things of even getting into the academy and all the work that it takes to stay at the academy and
You
to do
mentioned that a couple
well.
times. Like,
Yeah.
what was so hard about it? And tell us a little bit about that first year if somebody's interested in going to a similar type of academy.
Mhm. Yeah, so like I said before, the application process starts junior year of high school. And you do have kind of the normal college application part of it. You have to send in your SAT and ACT scores, send in your transcripts, letters of recommendation, those kind of things. But then you also have to do physical fitness tests, medical exams, um, couple extra essays. You have to apply for a congressional nomination in order to get in. And all your Congress people have their own application processes for those.
Oh,
You
wow.
have to send them your own stuff and write your own things. You have to do interviews for your congressperson and for the academy, and it's a long process,
What about
right?
if you got arrested or had like a drinking charge or drugs or something? Could you still go?
Maybe. So all those kind of issues depend on waivers. So there are some issues that they will waiver into the academy.
Okay.
Like if you have, I know several people at school who had a history of drug use. They were totally honest in the application process, and they were able to get it waived.
Wow.
I Yeah, right. It's not always, and I'm
Impressive.
sure not everyone does, but you can get certain things waived. You can get certain medical issues waived. You can get certain, legal infractions, troubles with the law. You can get those waived. It's not a guarantee. And the best advice is to definitely be honest about that going into it.
Right.
Because if you lie and they find out, then it's definitely not going to happen and it's not going to be a good time.
So it's worse to lie if you
Definitely worse to lie. Yeah. But
right?
like I said, I know people who have had those issues with all of those things and who still made it into the
Yeah.
academy. So
Um, that's really interesting. And I'm going to start wrapping things up in just a moment. But that first year, how brutal is that physically and emotionally going through plebe year?
it's tough. Plebe year is designed to be tough, which is kind of one of those things where you have the normal fears, right? You're away from home for the first time. You're with all these new people, new roommates. You've never met them before. Like,
Yeah.
what are they going to be like? Are they going to be weird? So it's kind of the normal fears, the normal issues. Is the food going to be good? All those kind of things.
Yeah.
But then all the service academies, they design it to be even more challenging. So plebe year, you are the bottom of the totem pole. Every upper class, you have to greet them as Mr. Miss. You have to call them sir and ma'am. You have to. We have these thing rates, which are basically just things that you right. So you have to memorize these long passages. You have to know the menus for 3 meals in advance, always. So if one night someone asks me, like, what's for dinner tomorrow, I would have to tell them every item on the menu.
Do you
There are just
remember one of the meals? It's got to be deeply embedded in your brain. Hey, Regan,
I
what's
remember
for dinner tonight? Is that
so
how it
we had to do this
works?
thing called basically, but we also had to do something called chow calls, which is 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and 5 minutes before mealtime formation. Plebes would have to like line up all around company area inside the dorm and synchronously together give a chow call, which would be like, sir, you now have 10 minutes until morning quarters formation. Formation goes inside company area at 0700. Uniform for morning quarters formation is all hands working blues. The menu for morning meal is list all the items that you have.
Are there like
And
20
then
items?
not usually, I would say 10, 5 to
Okay.
10. So it's
Okay.
not too much, but you have to memorize the whole thing leading up to it and then the whole menu. And then you have to have conversational knowledge about news articles. Like plebe year is just weird and difficult.
What if
You
you
have
can't
morning
remember
workouts.
the food?
Uh, usually get punished.
Like
So
what's the punishment?
punishments are up to your training staff, which are other midshipmen in your company who are in charge of training you. And usually after plebe summer, your punishments aren't typically physical. Like if they ask me a menu and I messed up, they're not going to make me get on my face and do push-ups right there.
Yeah.
But they'll probably assign something like double covers, where I have to carry two hats around with me everywhere I go, or no backpack straps, so you have to carry your backpack to class instead of wearing it on your back.
Right. Right.
So it's all these little things that each on their own, it's not bad. Like it's not like they're hazing you or anything like that. It's just making your time a little more pressure and a little more stressful.
What about that physically? You're about to talk about the physical activities.
Yeah, so plebes have typically 2 or 3, some companies more, some companies less, morning workouts a week where you wake up at 5:30 and go work out before formation, before class,
Tell me
before
what the
anything like
workout
that.
is.
It depends on your training staff.
Like a
So,
popular one, a regular, normal.
um, so I'd say like, animal PT can be pretty popular. Lots of bear crawls, buddy drags, buddy carries, sprints up hills, things like that. So it's
Yeah.
a lot of high intensity workouts. And then there's a big culminating event at the end of plebe year called Sea Trials, which is it's usually about a 14-hour day. You start at 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
and you go all day. And it's a series of physical evolutions. You're swimming, you're running, you're carrying people, you're ground fighting, you're doing everything in one super long day. So usually second semester plebe year, all of your morning workouts are tailored to prepare you for sea trials.
And what if it's snowing?
At sea trials,
Well, no, like then those workouts because you're in Annapolis, or it's like it gets pretty cold in the winter and you're out there. Are you like, is it,
mhm.
snow, rain, sleet?
I mean, usually, unless you're going to go, like, unless it's going to be a run and the roads are icy or something like that, you're still going to go outside in cold weather. Sometimes there will be indoor workouts. We have a couple indoor gyms, basketball courts. Maybe you'll go do some suicides, do some workouts, go do a pool workout. There are several pools on campus. But yeah, if
Does
it's
it feel
cold, if
good
it's a
when you're
little
done?
rainy,
Yeah, you just do it. When you're done with the
yeah,
workout, do you feel good, or are you just like so beat? It's just there's no good feeling.
I'd say usually I was more on the beat side.
Just do it.
But people, I mean, people react to those kind of beat down workouts differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's first. You get through that, you can get through anything. So you got through that. Yeah.
That's kind of why they designed it to be that difficult, right? Plebe year is supposed to be super tough. So by the end of it, you can make it through the rest of your time at the
Some people
academy.
drop out.
Yeah, sometimes. We
Yeah.
lose, I think, so the class of 20 started at between 12 and 1,300 people overall, I think, probably around 1,200. And we're down to about 1,000 right now.
Okay.
So, I mean, we've lost a couple hundred, but it's not like a super ridiculous
Right.
percentage or anything.
Right. And then if people can't afford school or need financial aid, is that available for the academies?
So, all federal service academies are tuition free.
Right.
We pay them back in years of service after we graduate.
Right.
So, after I graduate, I will owe them at least 5 years of active duty service and 3 years of like reserve service. So that's how you pay them back. Though
What
you
happens?
can get time added to that if you do
Right.
something like flight school or some longer schooling that'll take a long time.
What happens if there's a ban and you can't serve because being trans?
So the current ban that's in place, and there are like several challenges to it in the court system right now. So fingers crossed. Hopefully, it won't stay in place forever. But the current ban that's in place does have a grandfather clause to it. So because I was already in the military, I should be able to commission and serve and live my life there. But anyone trying to come in won't be able to,
Right.
which is really like, so I'm very privileged, again, very happy to be in the position that I'm in, able to continue to serve and not have to choose between these two aspects of my identity. But got to keep perspective that not everyone is in the same situation as me, and it's super difficult.
So I know you're also an ally and you help students. I've seen that you really want to support others.
Mhm.
Are you a leader in Spectrum? Is that what I read? You work with
No,
Spectrum still?
I work with Spectrum, yeah, and so I'm not on the actual officer staff of
Okay.
Spectrum, but I go to meetings sometimes. Still good friends with most people in the group. We have these things called safe spaces trainings at the academy, so I usually help put together the panel of midshipmen for that. So I try to stay involved as much as I can.
Right. And if someone watching this has questions and they want to learn more about just your experience or they would like to be directed to resources, are you comfortable with people reaching out to you?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be
What's the best
comfortable with
way?
that. I think honestly, a Facebook message is probably the best way.
Yeah.
I don't really accept friend requests from people I don't know, but no, I will accept message requests and I will respond to people, of
That's
course.
that's terrific. And I know that you are engaged.
I
Like you said,
am,
started this off,
yes.
you're engaged. So how did you meet your significant other? Will you share your love story with us?
Share my love story.
Yeah.
Sure. So sorry, she's right over there. She heard me say that.
That's
So
great.
we actually met during my year off, my year home from the academy. We were both in the same sign language class.
Sign language.
Yeah, so my kind of perspective on taking that year off was I wasn't initially planning on doing it, but make the best with what you got, right? So I signed up for a couple classes, just trying to learn some skills I wouldn't otherwise have time to know. And then in my sign language class, I met my fiance. We went on a we went on a movie date, and things just kind of went from there.
Wow. So did you ask your fiance out with a sign? Like, did you give her a sign or did you like how'd that work?
I super suavely handed her my phone with an open contact page on it to ask for her number.
Nice, nice. Yeah, well, you're not afraid of anything. And then, I have to ask because I know that if I was listening, I would want to know. So, when it comes to dating and introducing yourself, uh, at what point do you share the part of you that's trans, and how does that work? Is that's got to be something that you have to think about.
Yeah, yes, dating while trans adds its own element of difficulty. My policy, and I think it's the best policy for anyone to follow, is definitely to be honest upfront, or as upfront as you can be.
Yeah.
Like that's something that ideally, honestly, before the first date, before the second date, before you really start getting invested, that needs to be something that's laid out there. Because if you do get invested and then they are gonna reject you or have a bad reaction, that's just gonna cause you more pain and just be a bad situation overall.
So,
So
how did
definitely
you
like just
tell us the conversation? How do you do that?
I I'm trying to remember now. I mean, it's been a couple years of how it happened. Apparently, it came up naturally in a conversation about fan fiction somehow.
Fan fiction.
um, but but yeah, so I don't know. I guess it came up probably through a text conversation with her.
A text.
Um,
A text conversation. 'Cause I
yeah,
would
I
think
mean,
that would
so
be
our
the worst way
classes.
to do it. I mean, I'm not like there's no judgment, but like I'm an advice columnist too, and it's like, is that really the place? I mean, but who knows? There's like no rules.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's different with every person, with every situation, but also like we had class together once a week, and then outside of that, at least for those first few weeks, we didn't really see each other much. So texting is kind of the way to
Sure.
communicate if you're not seeing someone every day.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think there is something to be said for saying it in an electronic format to give them even a second to like process themselves
Ah, so
before
they're
you
not
go on your date
ambushed.
and do those things. Yeah,
Right.
because it's obviously it should never be an issue. It's completely fine. Trans people are people, right? Like it's
Yeah.
whatever. But I mean, people come from different backgrounds, and maybe someone would need a day or two, but they would be okay
Right. Were you
with it,
okay
you
with
know?
were you okay with her not being okay with you being trans?
It's I don't know. I probably would not have been happy with any hesitation or not okay. I mean, luckily she was completely fine. It was a complete non-issue. We went on our date. Everything was good. Obviously, everything was good. We're engaged now,
Yeah.
about to get married. But but yeah, I mean, it's just a weird dating situation. But
Yeah.
however you go about it, my advice is definitely to go about it sooner rather than later.
Being honest about who you are and how.
Yeah, because if they don't like it, like you want to get them out of your life as soon as possible. Like that's not worth it.
Right. It's not worth your time or the other person's
No.
time. Yeah, that's a whole piece, and it's it's fascinating because dating and relationships are hard enough, but then when you introduce all of these other elements, you have to be comfortable with yourself, and you have to be grounded, and you have to have your people and your places. And it sounds like you've done a wonderful job of doing that. And you seem incredibly balanced and happy, and it's a joy. And I love that part. And I know that earlier I was like, was there a bottom out? Was there like a horrible moment? And you know, the beautiful thing is you didn't have to have that, and you have lived a really wonderful full life of doing incredible things. And it sounds like living life in alignment with your values and your spirit, and it's a wonderful thing to see. If you
Yeah.
have any advice for someone who is, let's say, 14, 15 years old, and they are starting their journey, what can you tell them to help them?
Well, one, and this is so cliche, but honestly, it does get better.
Yeah.
And that's something that it's hard to get perspective at that age. I mean, when I was 13, 14, 15, that was that whole eighth grade, beginning of high school, kind of struggling with who I am. It's a tough time. I think trying to retain some sense of perspective is definitely a good starting point. But from there, I would say that the internet is a great resource. It's something that I wish had been more active when I was having these questions. But I mean, there are a million trans groups on Facebook. I'm in a couple of them. We
What are a
get
couple you
younger people.
recommend?
Uh, One that's really good for education. It's called, what was it? Sounds like you need to be educated on transgender individuals. I think is what the title of it is. It's a long
.com?
title. No, it's a Facebook group. So it's a
Okay,
group on Facebook.
right,
Uh,
great.
but that's a really good education one. But if you just go to groups, Facebook groups, search for some trans groups,
Yeah,
you'll find a good thing. And like I said, I'm in a couple of them, and we get teenagers, other people coming on asking questions, and everyone always answers those very well. Same thing with Reddit groups. Definitely just try to find your community and build your community wherever it is. If
yeah,
you can do it in person, awesome. If there's a local community center, if there's some kind of GSA at your school, really kind teachers, anything like that, that's amazing and invaluable to have those in-person resources. But in situations where you can't, right, if you live in rural North Carolina or wherever it may be, definitely turn to those online resources and try to build a community where you feel comfortable, because
yeah.
that's super important.
Well, it's wonderful that people can see the voice behind the username, the person who is helping support other people, whether it's through Reddit or through the Facebook organizations or groups, and also even on campus. Uh, Regan Kibby, it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you for being so generous. I'm so grateful that you could be a part of this. And for anybody who wants to continue the conversation, you can find Regan. You can also reach out to me. I'm an ally, a supporter, an encourager. I just want you to live a life that's in alignment with what's important to you. So you can be a bright light and shine because that's what you deserve. So thanks for being here, and thank you all for participating. Look forward to continuing the conversation. Thanks so much.